All right, well, here we are tonight, a few years later. We're all a little bit older. I want you to know that Caleb wrote that video, and he did the interviews. It's all his idea. He was one of the chief ones that organized those over 100 high school students to go door to door. Part of my calling and part of my mission, you see, is to raise up the next generation, folks. To get the young people involved in the future of their country. Because it's going to be their country pretty soon, isn't it? There is hope. You know, our campaign, we're titling our campaign this time around, Heritage and Hope. What's that mean? What is our heritage that I believe we have a duty and a moral obligation to pass on? I call it the 3 C's. Quite simply, our heritage as Americans comes from the ideas and systems of thought embodied in Christianity, capitalism, and the Constitution. Our economic system of free market enterprise is summed up in the word capitalism. Our political system is based upon the Constitution, and the cultural foundation of our nation is endued with Christianity. I compare it like this. Christianity is to our culture what yeast is to bread. It is the key essential ingredient that has caused the American culture to have the particular shape, the particular form that it does. This is our heritage. Now, we all know that in the past generation, since I've been born in 1960, all elements of this heritage have been under attack. We elected a president in 2008 who shortly before he got elected said, you know, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. What in the world was he talking about? It's very simple. He was talking about the redistribution of income. He was talking about taking this country from an equal opportunity type country to an equal outcome type country. Basically moving us from free market enterprise towards what we would call socialism. Let's take the second thing, the Constitution. This is a constitutional republic. It is based upon the rule of law. But what we have seen, beginning with this whole philosophy of judicial activism, viewing the Constitution as a living document as opposed to trying to determine the original intent and meaning of the Constitution and interpreting it like that, has moved us from a constitutional republic to, we have a country now that is not based so much on the rule of law as it is men. Whoever's in charge, exercising their power outside of the Constitution. We see it on the Supreme Court, we see it in the office of the presidency, what we would call presidential imperialism. You don't like the law, you just instruct a particular agency, don't follow the law, right? If you can't get the DREAM Act passed through the Congress, you just do it by executive order. These are the kinds of challenges we're facing. The greatest challenge is the one that's already been mentioned here by several people. Everyone in this room just about is old enough to know the truth of this statement. In the 1960s, as a nation, we began to turn away from God. The Supreme Court, through its various rulings, began to drive God out of what we call the public square. Beginning in 1962 with the ruling on prayer in school, continuing up into the 80s with the ruling which brought down the 10 Commandments from all the schoolhouses. The second thing that began to happen in the 1960s, and y'all all know this is true, is that we began to turn from the idea of moral absolutes to the ideas of moral relativism and situational ethics. Now folks, when you put together the nation turning to moral relativism, driving God out of the public square, and you combine those two things, my friends, that's how we got Roe v. Wade. That is how we got. Roe v. Wade did not cause that. Roe v. Wade is the outcome of that. We are now 40 years into it. 40 years into it. I don't quite know the significance of that other than I know that the number of 40 is very important in the Bible. But what are we facing in 2013? What is before the Supreme Court right now? What are they going to rule on this summer? They're going to rule on what the definition of marriage is. What we're seeing here, my friends, is what I call intergenerational moral bankruptcy. 40 years ago, Roe v. Wade. Now, a month or two ago, They had a horrific trial up in Pennsylvania of a man named Kermit Gosnell. How many of y'all follow that or know anything about what I'm talking about? I'll never forget seeing this picture come through my email of this little baby laying on a table with the back of its neck punctured, where they had driven the scissors in there and then opened them up to create an incision to snip the spinal cord. You probably didn't see that in the mainstream media because they black out everything like that that has to do with the destruction of innocent human life made in the image of God, because that's their philosophy. I want to tell you that made me very angry. It made me very grieved. And quite honestly, it made me disgusted. And here's what I have to say about that. Logically and morally, I don't think there's any difference whatsoever between what was done to that baby and what's being done in abortion clinics in this nation every day of the year to dismembering babies through this procedure of abortion, 12 weeks old, where they cut them up and vacuum them out. It's the same thing. We're in a precarious situation in America because we have turned away from God. Put the next slide up, son. We are a nation that is sailing in dangerous waters. And we have a false sense of security based upon our economic and military might. But we're in dangerous waters. Because you cannot kill 55 million human beings made in the image of God and God not take notice. As a nation, we must turn back to God. I believe there's hope for America, or I wouldn't be campaigning. I run into some people who have completely given up. They've just given up. They'll tell you to your face, there's no hope. We have declined too far. I don't think you believe that, or you probably wouldn't be here tonight. I certainly don't believe it. But here's the foundational point for hope. 2 Chronicles 7:14. Our nation must turn back to God. Now let me move on from that to the political arena. There's only one hope, politically speaking, for the United States of America, and that's the Republican Party. Okay? The Democratic Party is sold out on every point of the heritage we've talked about. They're already sold out. The Republican Party is the only hope. We had a disappointment in November, didn't we? We thought we were going to win that election. A year before the election in November, I said to anyone who would have listened, it doesn't matter who we nominate. We're going to win the presidency next year because this is so bad. We could nominate Mickey Mouse and we'll still win. And I, along with many of you, was shocked that that's just not the way it turned out. And the Republican Party began to do some soul searching after that. And boy, I think they came up with all the wrong answers. Because here's what they began to say from Washington, D.C. You know what we need to do is moderate our message. Don't say anything about abortion. If you can, try not to talk about homosexual marriage because you might offend someone that we want in the party. They don't want candidates who are going to talk about what is called social issues, which are really just moral issues. And then they got on the immigration bandwagon and said, you know what? We have to change our philosophy about what we believe about illegal immigration. Folks, this is a question of the fundamental rule of law. You know, there's 40 million foreign-born people in the United States right now. 30 million are here legally, and over 10 million are here either through breaching our borders or through overstaying their visa. And the Republican Party is going down the wrong road to try to deal with this problem. Now here's what we all understand, but it needs to be said. Our senior senator is not just on the wrong side of this, he's the one who's leading the charge. Do you all understand? He is the key national spokesperson for amnesty. That's why in